Okay, if you're an educator, an instructional designer, or part of an institution trying to really elevate your digital offerings, you've landed in exactly the right spot. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're decoding the ultimate blueprint for designing e-learning content that actually captivates. We're going to dive right in and explore how you can conquer student disengagement and completely transform your digital classrooms. And hey, this isn't just theory, right? We're talking about practical, commercial-grade strategies to upgrade your e-learning programs literally today. Let's get into it. So, let's kick things off with a bit of a hard truth. Are your distance learners actually learning, or are they just passively scrolling through walls of text? It's a real struggle, isn't it? Distance learning so often leaves students feeling totally isolated, and honestly, it leaves instructors feeling disconnected from the class too. Without that natural buzzing energy of a physical classroom, it is dangerously easy for learners to slip into a passive state. They end up treating your carefully crafted course like just another endless social media feed. Well, we need a targeted approach to fix exactly that. And here is the ultimate solution. You might have the most expensive, absolute state-of-the-art virtual learning platform on the market, but technology and learning design, they both point inward to one massive central element: content. Those flashy platforms simply don't guarantee success on their own. The true heart and soul of the whole e-learning framework is the content design. It's the vital key, the glue, that brings the entire framework together and actually makes the technology mean something to the user. There's a very good reason content is king has become the golden rule in e-learning development. It lays down the absolute blueprint for digital learning. Actually, this traces all the way back to Lee Shulman's 1986 concept of content knowledge, which basically refers to the amount and the organization of knowledge held right there in the mind of the teacher. As an instructor, you have to deeply, fundamentally understand the facts, concepts, and principles of your subject. Because if you don't, you risk misrepresenting the material entirely. The way you organize this subject matter, how you structure what the learner expects to see, that is the very foundation of everything we do in e-learning. Which brings us to a major paradigm shift. For generations, we relied on a traditional content-centered approach. Think about a standard textbook, right? The content is fixed, and the student is fully expected to just adapt themselves to it. But effective e-learning demands the exact opposite. We have to make a hard pivot to a learner-centered model. In this new dynamic, the content and the teacher actually have to adapt to the student. It's a massive, fundamental reversal of how educational materials are structured, completely changing the relationship between the learner and the knowledge itself. So what does this learner-centered approach actually look like in practice? Well, the focus moves entirely over to the process of learning. The responsibility shifts squarely onto the student to learn, while you, the teacher, step back to become a facilitator. Now, research consistently shows this benefits the student immensely, promoting much higher levels of cognition and making learning a truly transformative, active experience. But let's be real, this can be tough. The source material points out that for students who are used to just being passive listeners, especially in cultures where asking questions might even be discouraged, accepting this new responsibility takes time. But the cognitive payoff? Getting a truly independent, engaged student, that is absolutely worth the growing pains. Now, to build this kind of captivating content, you don't actually need a massive budget, and you definitely don't need to start from scratch. Enter your new best friend, Open Educational Resources, or OERs. First introduced at a UNESCO conference way back in 2000, OERs are basically digitized materials offered freely and openly for educators to use, reuse, and remix. We're talking everything from video clips and audio files to full-blown textbooks, simulations, and games. They're generally released under open licenses like Creative Commons, which means you can tweak and redistribute them. Long story short, you do not have to reinvent the wheel to build world-class, media-rich modules. But as we all know, the free web is kind of the Wild West, so quality control is absolutely vital. Because the internet lacks the editors and librarians you'd find in traditional publishing, you have to rigorously evaluate what you're using. You really need a quick, actionable checklist for vetting these open resources. First up, check for accuracy. Is the information actually reliable and error-free? Next, authority. What are the author's credentials? Then, objectivity. Is the page free from obvious bias or, advertising masquerading as fact? Currency. When was it actually last updated? And finally, coverage. Does it explore the subject deeply enough? Running your OERs through this checklist guarantees you're providing high-quality, up-to-date data for your learners. Okay, so once you have your content vetted, you need to format it into what we call self-instructional materials, or SIMs. Honestly, think of SIMs as the very engine of distance learning. Because distance learners don't have that regular face-to-face contact with a teacher, these specially structured materials essentially have to step up and carry out all the functions of a live instructor. They are the nucleus. They drive the online discussions, the assignments, the assessments. Basically, your SIMs have to do all the heavy lifting of teaching all by themselves. So, the million-dollar question, how do you actually write those materials? Well, scratch everything you know about traditional academic writing, because writing for distance learning is an entirely different beast. You want to create a friendly, interactional situation right there on the screen. To pull this off, go for a simple, direct writing style and a very conversational tone. Use the active voice and please, ditch the wordiness and heavy jargon. It is incredibly helpful to use pronouns like we and you to speak directly to the learner. You're essentially trying to replicate the warmth, the clarity, and the vibe of a one-on-one tutoring session right through your text. Let's break down exactly how this builds into an application process. Step 1. You must set precise objectives. Clearly state exactly what the learner will be able to do or understand by the end of the module. Step 2, use activities to chunk the content into manageable learning blocks. And step 3, and this is absolutely crucial, these activities have to push learners way beyond simple memorization. You need to drop them into real-world situations, asking them to analyze problems, suggest solutions, and make tough decisions. That is exactly how you trigger critical and creative thinking, even when the student is sitting alone in their living room. I absolutely love this quote from Roundtree because it hits the nail right on the head. Your materials must be guiding, motivating, intriguing, expounding, and explaining. To pull that off, your main goal as a teacher is to construct authentic situations. For example, one source author talked about designing a course on curriculum and intentionally pulling in case studies from all over the globe, places like Indonesia, Britain, Japan, and South Africa. Yes, it took a lot more time to design, for sure, but it ensured the content was highly relevant and allowed students to apply generic concepts to authentic, real-world educational systems. Finally, keeping an isolated student motivated, that is perhaps your biggest hurdle in all of this. To design a truly effective module, you have to deliberately weave encouraging words straight into the text. Use really clear icons that help learners easily navigate the structure without getting frustrated. Give them frequent, meaningful feedback so they constantly know how they're progressing. And make sure to deliver this relevant, valid content using a variety of media. Mix up the text with audio, video, and interactive elements. These specific design choices are what combat that feeling of isolation and keep the learner consistently engaged and moving forward. So I want to leave you with this final thought. How are you going to redesign your next lesson to truly put the learner first? Look, the e-learning landscape is highly competitive right now, and the institutions that thrive, the ones that really stand out, will be the ones that absolutely master content design. You've got the blueprint now. From leveraging free open educational resources, to writing highly conversational, self-instructional materials, to building active, case study-driven modules, take these strategies, put them to work, and start transforming your digital classroom today. Happy designing, everyone!